Shadow never barked without a reason. That's what Ellen used to say back when Sunday mornings still smelled like fresh coffee and lavender soap. She'd say it with a warm smile, patting the dog's head, then giving Cal that look. The kind that meant you better listen to him, not me. But Ellen was gone now. 7 winters had passed since cancer took her in the quietest way imaginable. Cal Beckett had learned to live with silence. What he couldn't live with was that bark. Because this morning Shadow stood frozen at the edge of the pine trail, tail stiff, ears locked forward, and let out a single low, rumbling growl that sent ice down Cal's spine. If you've ever believed a dog can sense what humans can't, you're going to want to hear what happened next. And if you love true stories of courage, loyalty, and unexpected heroism, go ahead and hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss a single moment from Animal Heroes. Cal paused mid-step. He was 5 miles into his morning hike, the same trail he and Shadow had walked every day since they moved to Estes Hollow. The trees were whispering in that cold Colorado wind again. Birds weren't singing. Not a single squirrel in sight. Shadow took 2 slow steps forward, then stopped. His body was tense, alert, but not afraid. Cal narrowed his eyes. "What is it, buddy?" he asked softly. Shadow didn't move. He just stared, unblinking, at the thick brush beyond the trail. Cal followed his gaze. Nothing. Not at first. Then came the sound. Faint but not natural. A click, a static buzz. Then silence. Cal reached for the handheld radio clipped to his belt. He kept it on out of habit. Still tuned to the sheriff's department frequency, though he hadn't worn the badge in years. 12 southbound. Officer down. Coordinates not static. Then nothing, just wind. Cal's hand tightened around the radio. "That's Monroe's unit," he muttered, mostly to himself. Shadow growled again, deeper this time. Cal's instincts stirred. Not just the soldier's instincts and the husband's, the widower's. The kind that knew how quickly life could change and how long the silence afterward could last. He looked down at Shadow. "You sure?" he asked. Shadow's ears twitched. That was all the answer Cal needed. They veered off the trail. The underbrush grew thicker. Old pine needles softened their steps. The forest here hadn't seen boots in a long time. It smelled of moss and rain-soaked bark. Then Shadow stopped again. This time he barked. Once. Sharp. Urgent. That's when Cal saw it. The glint of metal through the branches. He pushed forward, branches slapping against his coat. When he emerged into the clearing, he froze. There it was. A sheriff's cruiser. Half covered in leaves. Parked at an odd angle like someone had swerved off the service road. Door wide open. Headlights off. Cal approached slowly. The driver's side door was empty. No sign of a struggle, but something felt off. He crouched beside the front tire. That's when he saw it, a smear of dried blood on the fender. Shadow whined behind him. Cal turned. The old dog had his nose to the ground, tail stiff, pacing in a tight circle like he was chasing a scent he didn't quite trust. "Monroe?" Cal called toward the woods. His voice bounced back unanswered. A gust of wind rustled the trees. A piece of fabric fluttered from a nearby bush. Cal stepped closer. A navy blue cloth, torn, with a brass name tag still attached, R. Monroe. Cal's gut clenched. Riley Monroe. Young, brave, maybe a little too confident for her own good. But she had a kind heart. She was supposed to be on patrol last night. Alone. He picked up the tag and turned it over in his hand. Still warm from the morning sun. Recently dropped. Shadow's bark broke the silence again. He was standing by the tree line. Paw lifted, ears trained ahead. Then came the sound Cal feared most. A train. Horn faint. Distant. But getting louder. Cal's heart dropped into his boots. The southbound freight line cut straight through the hills. The same direction Shadow had been leading. He looked down at the radio again. Still nothing. Then Shadow ran, not just ran, bolted. Full sprint. Straight into the trees. Cal didn't hesitate. He followed. Cal hadn't sprinted like that in years. Not since the day they'd folded Ellen's American flag and handed it to him in silence. His knees weren't what they used to be, and Shadow wasn't a pup anymore. But adrenaline made strange things possible. Branches whipped against Cal's arms as he tore through the brush. Shadow was moving fast but not erratic. He was tracking, focused, locked in on something only he could smell. The train horn blared again, louder now. Closer. It wasn't supposed to be on this track today. Cal knew that. Freight only passed through this side of the hollow on Tuesdays and Fridays, but today was Sunday. Something was off. Cal leapt over a fallen log and stumbled into a clearing. Shadow stood at the far end, nose down, tail stiff. Cal caught up, breath ragged, sweat cold against the back of his neck. "What is it?" he asked. But Shadow was already moving again, following a narrow animal path that led toward the railroad. The ground began to change. Grass gave way to loose gravel and dust. Cal's boots crunched over crushed rock, a utility path alongside the tracks. The air smelled different here, metallic, heavy, like burnt oil and old rain. Shadow stopped dead. Cal followed his gaze and saw it. A black boot. Half buried in the dirt near the rail line. Torn at the ankle. Blood on the laces, he crouched beside it. The boot was standard issue patrol gear. Women's size. Riley's a few feet away, tire marks curved into the gravel, abrupt and sloppy. Whoever brought her here, they'd backed out fast. Cal stood and scanned the area. There was no sign of Riley, no movement. Just the humming anticipation of the coming train. Shadow barked. Not toward the boot, but farther down the line. Cal followed the dog's stare and froze. At the far edge of the bend, just where the track curved between two hills, something shimmered in the light, a glint of silver duct tape. Cal's heart punched his ribs. He started running. The heat from the rails rose in waves. Cal could hear the train now, a deep rumble rolling beneath the earth. He skidded to a stop as he reached the curve, and there she was, Riley Monroe, tied to the tracks. Her wrists bound above her head, her ankles lashed tight around a rail spike. A strip of duct tape across her mouth, half torn and smeared with blood. Her eyes fluttered open. She saw Cal, but she didn't scream. She couldn't. Cal dropped to his knees beside her, hands trembling but quick. "I've got you," he said. "You're okay?" Riley's head shook weakly. She was trying to say something. Cal peeled the tape from her mouth. "Trap," she whispered. "It's a trap." The train horn blasted again, this time deafening. Cal spun toward the bend. A solid wall of metal and thunder barreled toward them. He turned back to Riley. "Shadow, stay," he shouted. He yanked at the knots around her ankles, but they were pulled tight under the track hardware. Whoever tied her here knew exactly how to make it count. Cal reached for his pocket knife, a small worn tool with a bone handle. A gift from his father. The blade sliced through the first rope, the second one held tight. The train was closer now. 50 seconds, maybe less. Cal threw his weight into it, digging his fingers beneath the knot. Riley's breath was shallow, her skin ghost pale. She was going to pass out again. With one final twist, the rope snapped. Cal scooped her up, staggered backward. Shadow barked wildly behind him, urging them on. They cleared the track just as the train screamed past, the wind nearly ripping Riley from his arms. The force knocked Cal onto the gravel, shielding her as the cars roared by, one after another in a blur of steel and heat. Then silence. Just like that. The world exhaled. Cal lay there a moment longer, Riley limp but breathing against his chest. Shadow paced nearby, nose to the air, body tense, still alert. Cal gently shifted, propping Riley up against a rock. Her eyes fluttered open again. "Thank you," she croaked. He gave a small nod. "You owe Shadow the thanks." Riley gave the faintest smile. "I never heard it coming," she said. "I trusted the call. I thought it was real." Cal furrowed his brow. "What call?" Riley looked away. "This morning. Dispatch said there was a child in trouble near the switch station. I drove out alone." Cal stiffened. "There was no child," she whispered. Just a man with gloves. And a mask." Cal looked toward the woods. Shadow growled again. Low. From deep in his chest, someone was still watching. Riley sat hunched against a boulder, clutching a thermal blanket Cal had pulled from his backpack. Her hands were scraped raw. Her voice was thin. But she was alive. Shadow sat beside her like a sentry, eyes scanning the tree line. Every few seconds he would lift his head, sniff the wind, then settle again, alert but calm. That dog didn't relax unless he was sure. Cal crouched nearby, speaking softly into his radio. "Dispatch, this is Cal Beckett. I've got Officer Riley Monroe alive. South rail curve, mile marker 82. Need immediate response, ambulance and backup. Possible abduction. The radio crackled with static. Then silence. He tried again. Still nothing. We're still jammed, he muttered. Riley blinked. He said no one would come. He was right, wasn't he? No, Cal said gently.
He's wrong.
Helps just delayed. But even as he said it, the words felt sour in his mouth. He stood and scanned the woods again. There were signs someone had been there recently. Broken branches. Cigarette butts half buried in the dirt. But no footprints. No tire marks this time. Whoever did this had taken their time getting in, and even more time getting out clean. What else do you remember? Cal asked. Riley shifted, wincing. I got the call early. Around 6:15 a.m., dispatcher said there was a boy, maybe 10 or 11, reported missing near the old switch station. It was just outside my zone, but we're short-staffed. You went alone. She nodded. Didn't think twice. I mean, a kid missing? Of course I went. Cal kept his expression neutral, but inside a knot tightened. Riley looked down. When I got there, the place was dead quiet. Not a single car. No houses close. Just that old ranger shed. I didn't even have time to draw my sidearm. He was already behind me. Mask? She nodded. And gloves. Heavy ones, black. His voice was muffled, but deep, like he was disguising it. Did he say anything? Riley hesitated. Yeah. He leaned in real close and whispered, let's see how long it takes them to find one of their own. Cal exhaled slowly. The tone, the precision, the setup, and this wasn't random. This was personal. Was there anything familiar about him? He asked. Riley shook her head. No, but there was one thing. She reached into her jacket pocket, fingers trembling, and pulled out a thin silver object, a dog tag, worn, scratched, the chain broken. Cal took it, flipped it over. The name was barely legible, T. Monroe. He stared at it. That's my father, Riley whispered. Cal blinked. Your father? He died 10 years ago. In prison, arson charge. Everyone said it was suicide. But I never saw the body. Cal's mind raced. A decoy call. A masked man. A deliberate setup near the rails. A military-style restraint job. And now a dog tag from a dead inmate? This wasn't just about Riley. This was a message. Shadow stood up suddenly. His ears twitched. Eyes locked onto the brush beyond the clearing. Someone's here, Cal said, instinct kicking in. He stepped in front of Riley, scanning the trees. The wind picked up. Leaves scattered. But there was no movement, no sound. Just tension, then a flicker. Far in the trees, maybe 50 yards out, and the silhouette of a man, still. Watching. Cal didn't move. He knew better than to chase a shadow in the woods. That's how people got ambushed. Instead, he knelt beside Riley. We need to move. She looked up, fear flashing in her eyes. I've got you, he said. We'll stay off the tracks. Follow the ridge north. It's slow, but safe. No open line of sight. He turned to Shadow. Track lead. Pace slow. The dog understood instantly, taking point. They moved quietly through the forest, staying low and off trail. Cal carried Riley for part of the way until she insisted on walking. Her strength was coming back, though every step looked like it hurt. The old ridge path curved toward a maintenance shed, long abandoned but solid. Inside, Cal locked the door, propped a chair beneath the knob, and used an old crate as a makeshift bench for Riley. Shadow paced near the window. The radio still didn't work. Cal sat beside her and finally asked the question that had been burning since the eye. Start. Why would someone target you? Riley hesitated. Because I asked questions, she said softly. About the prison fire. About how my father really died. Cal leaned forward. You think someone covered it up? She nodded. I found things. In the archive room. Case files that didn't match. Inmate logs changed. Guards transferred right after the incident. And you started digging? Not officially. I just wanted closure. For my mother. For myself. Cal rubbed his hands together. And now someone's trying to bury the past by burying you. Riley swallowed hard. He wanted me found eventually, that was the point. To send a message, Cal said. They sat in silence. Outside, Shadow let out a single growl. Low. Steady. Cal reached for his flashlight and stood. Riley grabbed his sleeve. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. He looked out the cracked window, and this time, there was no doubt. In the distance, between the trees, a figure moved. Cal narrowed his eyes. Same man, same build, same patience. Watching, waiting. The figure stood just beyond the trees. Unmoving and watching, Cal's breath slowed. He didn't draw a weapon, not yet. The last thing he needed was to provoke someone who already set a trap for a cop and nearly got away with it. Whoever this man was, he wanted something more than death. He wanted control. Riley noticed his silence. He's back, isn't he? Cal gave a small nod. Shadow saw him first. She sat up straighter, ignoring the pain. He's not finished. No, Cal said. He's just getting started. Outside the abandoned ranger shed, Shadow stood still as stone, ears forward, body tense. The German shepherd's chest moved slow and steady, like he was calculating. Let's not give him what he wants, Cal muttered. He helped Riley to her feet, steadying her arm. We'll go out the back. Shadow will lead. We stay quiet and low. If he follows, we lose him in the creek bend. Riley hesitated. Shouldn't we confront him? Cal glanced at her, his voice low and certain. This isn't the time. You want justice? Then we survive long enough to get it. They moved fast and quiet, staying off the path, ducking under pine boughs and weaving through dry brush. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that pressed into your ears. Shadow kept about 10 feet ahead, constantly scanning. At the creek bend, Cal stopped. He motioned for Riley to crouch beside a rock. They could catch their breath here, even if just for a minute. Riley rubbed her wrists, raw and red from the rope burns. He was watching the whole time, wasn't he? Even when the train came through, Cal nodded. He wanted to see if I'd get there in time. Like it was a test of what? Me. Riley leaned back, her voice shaky. There's something else I didn't tell you. Cal gave her time. She finally looked up. Before he left, before he tied me down, he put something in my vest pocket. She reached in slowly and pulled out a single folded photo, aged, creased, and faded. Cal took it. His stomach dropped. It was a photo of Riley as a child, maybe 6 years old, sitting on her father's shoulders in a backyard somewhere. Her mother stood beside them, blurry but smiling. On the back, written in smudged ink, "You forgot the truth." I didn't, Cal closed his eyes. He's not just taunting you. He thinks you betrayed him. He's dead, Riley whispered. Then someone out there wants you to think otherwise. They crossed the shallow creek and headed toward the open field near the old train barn. Cal knew the area well. Years ago, he'd helped volunteer at a nearby animal rescue shelter. He remembered the fire roads, the abandoned ranger camp, the way the wind always blew east through the hills. They were close to safe ground. But Shadow suddenly stopped cold again, this time at the base of a fallen pine. Cal's nerves snapped into focus. The tree was scorched at the edges, blackened like it had been set ablaze long ago. On the charred bark, something had been carved with a knife, T. Monroe below the name, a number, Yo412. Riley stared, frozen. That's his inmate ID. And someone took the time to put it here, Cal said. Riley's voice cracked. Then he didn't die in that fire. Not completely. By late afternoon, they reached a paved road. Cal flagged down an old rancher in a pickup who agreed to drive them to the sheriff's station. Riley sat in the back seat, her eyes glassy with exhaustion. Shadow curled beside her like a bodyguard. Cal rode up front with the window down, wind stinging his face. The air smelled of pine and diesel and ash. You know, the rancher said, tipping his ball cap. That dog of yours looks like he's ready to testify in court. Cal chuckled softly. He probably could. When they arrived at the station, 2 deputies ran out, shocked and relieved. Riley was whisked inside. Paramedics checked her vitals. Someone brought coffee. But Cal didn't follow her right away. He sat on the bench out front, Shadow at his feet, hands folded. He was thinking. Not about what happened, but about what hadn't. Inside the station, Riley spoke quietly to the sheriff. Her voice was steadier now. I think someone inside helped him. I don't know who. But there's no way he pulled this off alone. The sheriff frowned. You're saying there's a leak in our department? I'm saying, Riley said, that someone knew my schedule. Someone sent a fake call through official dispatch, and someone cleared his name from the prison fire records. The sheriff didn't argue, he just said, I'll get internal affairs involved. Riley shook her head. Don't go high up, not yet. Start with the bottom feeders and the quiet ones. The guys who file and forget. Then she looked toward the window where Cal still sat outside and unmoving. As dusk settled over Estes Hollow, Cal stood up. Shadow rose with him. He looked out across the hills. He could feel it. This wasn't just about Riley. This wasn't over. This was personal. The next morning brought fog, thick and low, curling between the hills like smoke, off a dying fire. Cal Beckett stood in the parking lot of the Estes Hollow Sheriff's Department with a paper cup of black, coffee in one hand and Shadow's leash in the other. He hadn't slept. Neither had Shadow. Inside, the building stirred to life. Phones ringing, boots scuffing on tile, someone cussing softly over a jammed printer. Same rhythm as always, but something felt tilted. Riley Monroe stepped outside, her arm in a fresh sling, hair pulled back, skin pale but steady. She looked like someone who'd stared down death and decided not to blink. I thought you went home, she said. Cal shook his head. Didn't feel right. She walked over, holding a manila folder. You were right not to. They sat on a bench beside the building, just out of earshot from the others. This came from records, Riley said, opening the folder. It's the original file on the prison fire. Cal scanned the yellowed pages. Inmate roster, guard rotation, incident report, then he stopped. T. Monroe, listed as missing, presumed deceased. No body recovered? Riley nodded. Exactly. And yet the file was marked as closed less than 48 hours after the fire. Fast. Too fast. Cal flipped to the last page. A black and white photo. Grainy but clear enough. A line of bodies covered in sheets, all but one. Who signed off on this? He asked. Riley pointed to a name at the bottom. Captain Ellis Cord, retired 6 months after the fire. Moved to Idaho, Cal frowned. He's not the one who helped bury this. He's the one they used. Riley leaned forward. There's more. She slid out a second photo. One that hadn't been in the digital file, a still from an old surveillance camera. It showed a figure in a jumpsuit walking through the east gate of the prison, after the fire had already started. Smoke in the background. Guards running the opposite way. And the man, walking calm like he wasn't in a hurry at all. Cal studied the timestamp, 2 minutes after the first alarm. 10 minutes before the roof collapsed. This never made it into the case report? No, Riley said. Someone tried to bury it. But they forgot to scrub the hard copies, Cal nodded slowly. Your father didn't die in that fire. No, she whispered. And now he wants me to know it. They drove out to the edge of town where the hills got steeper and the trees grew tighter around the road. Cal's truck rumbled over frost-heaved pavement, Shadow pacing in the back seat like he already knew where they were headed. Where exactly are we going? Riley asked. Cal glanced at her. Old Ranger Station. It's where I found the first sign. The rope, the scent trail. He's been using the woods like a hunting ground. Riley looked out the window. You think he's living out here? I think he's watching from out here, Cal said. And waiting. They parked near a gated fire road. Cal grabbed his backpack, checked his knife, flashlight, and small first aid kit. Riley adjusted her sling and pulled a compact Glock from her holster. I'm not going unarmed this time, she said. Cal gave a small nod. Good, but don't lead. Shadow does. They hiked in silence. The fog clung to the trees, muting sound, making everything feel close and slow. Shadow sniffed, barked once, then turned sharply off trail. Cal followed. They reached a clearing around mid-morning, a wide patch of dirt with burned grass and the black skeleton of a small cabin. What was left of the ranger station? Riley looked around. This place gives me the creeps. Good, Cal said. Means we're in the right spot. They circled the structure carefully. Shadow stopped near a pile of rusted debris and let out a low growl. Buried beneath the char, Cal found a metal toolbox. Burned, warped, but still shut. He pried it open with a pocket crowbar. Inside, water-damaged documents, a rotted-out notebook, and a single cassette tape. Cal turned it over. On the label, 412 Confessional. That's the inmate number, Riley whispered. It's him. Where's the nearest tape player? Cal asked. Riley gave a grim smile. The back room of the evidence locker has a deck from the 80s. Still works. Barely. Back at the station, the room was empty. Cal placed the tape in the old player, turned the knob, and pressed play. The tape hissed for a few seconds. Then a voice. Low. Gravelly. Familiar. This is Thomas Monroe. Inmate 0412, I know they said I'm dead. I'm not. Not yet. Riley gripped the table. I didn't start the fire. I was the one who tried to stop it. But it was too late. They needed a scapegoat. I gave them one, me. Cal stood motionless. I left for her, the voice continued. For Riley. I couldn't stay and let her live with the stain they'd painted on me. So I disappeared. Burned myself from the records. Hid where they'd never find me. Then a pause, but she came looking. She dug too deep. Now they'll come for her. I can't protect her anymore, but someone might. Another pause. You know who you are. The tape clicked. End. Cal shut it off. Riley stared straight ahead. He didn't want to be found. No, Cal said. But someone else did. Someone who knew he was alive. Someone who let him live him and used that secret as leverage. She looked at him. You think someone's still pulling strings? Cal nodded slowly. And I think we just kicked over a hornet's nest. The tape stopped, but the silence it left behind felt heavier than the voice that filled the room. Riley sat back, her face pale. Her father's words still echoed in the walls, bouncing between memory and disbelief. Cal stood still, arms crossed, jaw tight. Shadow lay at his feet, tail flat, head raised, sensing the shift in energy like only a seasoned canine could. That wasn't just a confession, Cal said finally. That was a warning, Riley nodded. He knew they'd come for me. Because I looked. Because I asked too many questions. No, Cal said, shaking his head. Because you got close to the truth. They left the evidence room and stepped outside. The morning fog had lifted, but the clouds were still low, hanging heavy over the ridgeline. Cal could feel it in his bones. A storm was coming, and not just the kind you could see on a Doppler radar. You still think someone inside helped cover it up? He asked. Riley answered without hesitation. I'm sure of it now. There's no way a prison inmate fakes his death, disappears, and leaves behind a confession tape without help. Not just help, Cal said. Protection. Someone wanted him buried, but not dead. Someone knew his silence had value. Riley exhaled sharply. So what do we do now? Cal glanced at her, then at Shadow. We do what they don't expect and we go quiet. We work outside the system. Riley raised an eyebrow. You mean go rogue? No, Cal said. I mean go smart. By late afternoon, they were back at Cal's cabin, a modest A-frame tucked into the hillside, with a rusted mailbox, a screened-in porch, and a wood-burning stove that clicked with every temperature drop. Riley sat on the couch wrapped in an old quilt, a cup of tea in her hands. Shadow lay nearby, eyes half closed but alert. Cal stood at the window, binoculars resting on the sill. He wasn't looking for deer. He was looking for cars that didn't belong, movement that didn't fit. I don't trust phones, he said. We'll communicate off-grid. Landline's been dead for years anyway. Landline? Riley teased. What are you, 80? Old enough to survive, Cal muttered. She smiled. First real smile in days. As the fire crackled, Cal laid out the basics of their plan. We need names, he said. Who worked the prison in the last 2 years before the fire? Who transferred? Who promoted? Anyone connected to Cord, the guy who signed off on your father's file. Riley pulled out her notebook. I've got some of that already, from the archives, but I'll need more. We'll use the town library, Cal said. Old papers, microfilm, anything digital is risky. Riley looked at him. You really think someone's monitoring me? I think someone already tried to kill you in broad daylight with a freight train. So yes, I do. That sobered her up quick. They worked through the evening, going page by page, building what Cal called a spider web. They tacked names to a corkboard he pulled from his hallway closet, linked by pins and red string. Cord, Riley's father. 2 guards who transferred 6 months after the fire. A warden who suddenly retired. A lawyer who handled 3 inmate settlements and then vanished. It wasn't a full picture, but it was enough to see the pattern. Someone's hiding money, Riley muttered. Cal nodded, or moving it. They used the fire as cover to clean house. Riley pointed at one name. Clyde Heron, an ex-administrator who now ran a local trucking business. He used to oversee inmate labor assignments. Cal narrowed his eyes. If anyone turned the prison into a money funnel, it was him. The next morning they drove to Heron Hauling, a gravel lot with a rusted trailer as an office and 6 parked semi-trucks. Cal parked a few blocks down and approached on foot with Shadow, while Riley circled to the side for lookout. The man inside the trailer was in his 60s. Big gut, stained flannel, ball cap with a faded flag. He looked up from his desk as Cal stepped in. "You lost, buddy?" "Nope," Cal said calmly. "Just looking for someone who used to know a guy named Monroe." Heron froze. "Thomas Monroe," Cal added. "Inmate 0412. Went missing after the prison fire you helped cover up." Heron stood up, trying to play tough. "I don't know what the hell you're talking about." Shadow growled low behind Cal's leg. That kind of growl that said, "You lie, I bite." Heron glanced down and sat back in his chair. "I'm not a cop," Cal said. "But she is." He nodded toward the window. Riley stood outside, arms folded, badge clipped to her hip. "I don't want your money. I don't want your business. I want the truth." Heron looked between the two of them. Sweat beaded along his temple. Then slowly he pulled out a metal key from his drawer. "What's that?" Cal asked. "It's a storage unit," Heron said. "Off Route 9, everything's in there. Names, payments, photos, even the original burn report." "Why'd you keep it?" Riley asked through the window. Heron looked at her, honest for the first time. "Because I knew someday someone would come looking. And I wanted a way to buy myself 10 more years." They took the key and left. Back in the truck, Riley stared out the window, quiet. Cal didn't press, but she finally said, "I don't think this ends with just a box of records." Cal nodded. "No, but it's a start." And Shadow from the back seat let out a soft whine, the kind that always came before something big. They arrived at the storage facility just after 9. The place sat off Route 9, tucked behind an old bait shop and a half-abandoned gas station where the prices hadn't changed in years. A chain-link fence surrounded the property, topped with rusted coils of barbed wire, more for show than protection. Cal parked the truck near the 3rd row, killed the engine, and glanced toward Riley in the passenger seat. She held the small metal key Clyde Heron had handed over, turning it between her fingers like it might burn her if she held it too long. "You ready for whatever's in there?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then softly, "I don't think anyone's ever ready for the truth. But I'm here." Shadow sat in the back seat, tail thumping once. Waiting. Unit 317 looked like every other one in the row. Aluminum siding, roll-up door, dented in the corner from someone's poor parking job. Cal unlocked the padlock and pulled up the door slowly. It groaned like it hadn't been opened in years. The air that spilled out was musty and dry, the kind of smell that clung to old paper and forgotten things. Inside, a single metal shelf. A banker's box, one folding chair, nothing else. Riley stepped inside first. Cal and Shadow followed. She approached the box like it might collapse under her touch, but it held firm. She lifted the lid. Inside were folders, dozens of them. Some stamped confidential, others handwritten with dates, names, and case numbers. On top of the stack sat a photo, a younger version of Thomas Monroe dressed in orange, standing beside 2 correctional officers. Riley's breath caught. "That's him," she whispered. "That's my dad." Cal picked up a folder labeled Inmate Labor, Monroe Unit. Inside, financial logs. Under the table, payment records, redacted memos. "This was a money laundering scheme," he muttered. "They were using inmate labor to pad contracts, cooking the books. And your dad found out." Riley sat slowly in the folding chair, reading through a typed letter dated 1 week before the fire. "It was signed by Thomas Monroe. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident." She looked up, eyes glassy. He knew, and no one believed him. Cal handed her another folder, this one full of old Polaroids. In several, Thomas appeared to be helping in cleanup crews, but in the background, Cal noticed someone else, the same man from the old prison tape footage. He was younger, clean-shaven, wearing a maintenance badge. Riley leaned in. "Wait, I know that face," Cal nodded slowly. "So do I. That's Harold Gentry." Riley frowned. "Wasn't he—" "A county commissioner now," Cal said. "Back then just a staffer. Guess he climbed fast once the right people disappeared." She exhaled. "And now he's running for state senate." Cal stared at the file. No wonder someone's cleaning up the past. By midday, they had packed the documents into a new box, taped it shut, and placed it carefully in the truck. Cal wanted to scan every page, get it off physical media, but he knew better than to use public internet. They'd do it from his cabin, slowly, carefully before they left. Riley spotted something in the back corner, a small duffel bag, faded green with a broken zipper. Inside, her father's old Bible, a cracked pair of glasses, and a cassette recorder. She turned it over in her hands. There was still a tape inside. Back at the cabin, they sat around the table. The wood stove clicked and popped, warming the room. Shadow rested under the window, snoring lightly but still twitching an ear every time the wind howled. Riley pressed play on the cassette. Her father's voice, clearer this time. "Riley, if you're hearing this, then I wasn't strong enough to disappear forever. I did what I could to protect you, but some truths catch up no matter how deep you bury them." She closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheek. "You'll find names. You'll find money. But what matters is what you do with it. Do not go to the ones who smile in public. Go to the ones who whisper in the dark. They know where the bodies are buried because they put them there." The tape clicked off. Riley sat still. Cal poured her a glass of water and said nothing. There wasn't much to say. They both knew what came next. "You really think this'll hold up in court?" she asked after a long pause. "It's not about court," Cal replied. "It's about leverage." He leaned forward. "We give this to the press or the right federal agent, hell, even a clean state judge, and then it starts a fire. These people survive in shadows. We drag them into the light." Riley nodded slowly. "And we start with Harold Gentry." Cal's eyes narrowed. "He's holding a campaign fundraiser tomorrow night. Big ranch outside Twin Creek. Public place," Riley added. "Lots of eyes. And maybe," Cal said, "just the right place to drop a bombshell." That night, as they prepared the files and made backup copies to store in 3 separate flash drives, Cal asked one final question. "Are you ready to go public with this? Once we step out there, there's no going back." Riley stared at the flames in the stove. "He burned his name to protect mine," she said softly. "It's time I stopped hiding behind silence." Shadow lifted his head, let out a soft huff, and laid back down. The kind of quiet approval only a good dog gives when he knows the storm is coming. "And you're finally ready to face it." The crowd at the Twin Creek Ranch had gathered under strings of white lights, sipping from plastic cups and nodding politely to country club donors and local politicians. Beneath the hum of soft jazz and friendly smiles, Riley Monroe stood near the back fence in plain clothes, her hair pulled into a tight braid. Beside her, Cal Beckett leaned against a split rail post, arms crossed, scanning the crowd. Shadow sat at his feet wearing a Service K9 vest that made him look like the most disciplined soul in the whole party. "You sure about this?" Cal asked quietly. Riley glanced at the barn doors where Harold Gentry was laughing with a group of reporters. He wore a spotless gray blazer, a flag pin, and that rehearsed camera-ready smile that never quite touched his eyes. "I've never been more sure of anything," she said. They'd made 3 copies of the file. One was with a local journalist Riley trusted. One was stored off-site, and one was sitting in Cal's truck, sealed in a metal box under the floorboard, just in case things went sideways. Riley clutched a thumb drive in her jacket pocket. "You have the tape?" Cal asked. She nodded. "It'll only take 10 seconds to play it." "That's all it needs." Inside the barn, Gentry took the stage to polite applause. His voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of voice that could sell oil to an environmentalist. "Friends," he said, "I stand before you not just as a candidate, but as someone who has always believed in transparency, in public trust." Riley stepped forward. Her boots echoed on the hardwood floor as the music faded. "Mr. Gentry," she said, voice loud and clear, "how long exactly have you believed in public trust? Since before or after the prison fire that killed 5 inmates and buried a conspiracy you helped cover up?" The room froze, cups stopped midair. Conversations died. Gentry squinted. "Excuse me?" She pulled out the recorder. Pressed play. Thomas Monroe's voice filled the barn. "You'll find names. You'll find money. But what matters is what you do with it." People turned. Faces paled. Gentry's eyes locked onto her. "You need to leave," he snapped. Cal stepped in behind her. "You try to stop her, and this goes out to every news station before midnight." A woman in a red dress stood near the buffet table. recording on her phone. Too late. The crowd began to murmur. Whispers spread like sparks on dry grass. Riley walked forward and placed the thumb drive on the podium. "I have copies," she said, including photos, memos, and signed statements. "You can try to deny it, but my father died in silence while men like you got rich. That ends tonight." Gentry's mouth moved, but no words came out. Cal watched him, saw the crack in the armor. Not fear, shame, or maybe just the realization that the world had finally caught up. Outside, the cold air hit Riley's lungs like fresh truth. The stars were beginning to break through the cloud cover, and the ranch lights glowed behind her like the end of a long, dark hallway. Cal walked beside her in silence. Shadow padded between them. After a long moment, Riley stopped. "He's still out there, isn't he?" she asked. Cal nodded. "Not Gentry? The man in the woods. The one who tied you to those tracks? He wasn't my father." "No," Cal said. "He was something else." They stood there, listening to the wind, then Riley said, "I don't want to run anymore. If he comes back, I'll face him. You won't be alone." She smiled, looking down at Shadow. "I know." Weeks passed. The news broke in slow, unstoppable waves. State investigations opened. Gentry withdrew from the race. Several former prison officials were subpoenaed. A federal task force was formed to reopen the Monroe fire case. One morning, a letter arrived at Riley's mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single photo. Riley and Cal, standing outside the rally, Shadow between them. On the back, written in handwriting she didn't recognize, "Truth doesn't die. It just waits." She slipped it into her father's old Bible, closed it gently, and placed it on the shelf. Back at Cal's cabin, Shadow sat by the window, eyes fixed on the tree line, always watching, always ready. Cal poured 2 mugs of coffee and handed one to Riley, who had just stopped by with her new case notes. "You ever think it's over?" she asked. Cal took a sip. "Nope, but I think we're better prepared for whatever's next." She nodded, reaching down to scratch behind Shadow's ears. "You saved me, didn't you?" The old dog leaned into her hand, tail thumping gently against the floor. "You both did," she whispered. "Thank you for following this story all the way through. It's been a journey of loyalty, justice, and healing, and we hope Shadow's instincts, Riley's courage, and Cal's quiet strength gave you something to hold on to. We'd love to hear from you. What would you have done in Riley's place? Would you have chased the truth, no matter the cost? Tell us your thoughts below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances and the power of one loyal dog. Until next time, stay safe and trust your gut, especially when it barks.